Dredge is a fun little fishing game with a Lovecraftian twist made by Black Salt Games and published by Team 17. I had seen very little on this game before I sat down to play it for the channel, so I was pretty curious about how fun it was going to be, and PSNProfiles says this game isn't too difficult to platinum either, so I say let's get into it. The game starts with a fisherman responding to a job ad, unfortunately ending with the fisherman crashing into some rocks underneath a large lighthouse. The fisherman wakes up on the dock and is greeted by the mayor of the town of Greater Marrow, who eventually gives the fisherman a new boat to use, but very weirdly warns him to be back before the sun goes down. After taking the new boat out for a spin, the fisherman gets back and the mayor explains the concept of being in debt. Ah, lovely. We then pay a visit to the fishmonger, who will sell our catches to, and the shipwright, who will repair our boat. After fishing for a while, the fisherman comes across a odd-looking fish, to say the least. When the fisherman gives this deformed fish to the fishmonger, he ends up cutting it open and pulling out a white handkerchief with crimson thread. That same night, after getting back to the boat, the fisherman sees someone staring at him through the window on his boat, saying he knows about the handkerchief and wants the fisherman to meet him on Blackstone Isle, which is just over there. The mysterious man saying he has a proposition for us. After making his way to the island, the fisherman meets the mysterious man who calls himself a collector of arts, artifacts, treasures, truce, and other curios. The collector offers to reward us for collecting a set of items for him around the map, even offering to fit the proper equipment for the tasks of the boat. After installing the dredging equipment, the collector says he wants 5 items: a ring, necklace, watch, music box, and key. So the collector sends us on our way, suggesting to ask about shipwrecks around the area to get an idea of where these items could be found. Eventually, the fisherman does find a wreck behind the town of Greater Marrow and discovers one of the items the collector was looking for, the key. He suggests the other pieces are probably scattered around the map, but for finding the key, he rewards the fisherman with a supernatural ability for his boat to move faster. So, nitrous for his boat, pretty much. After that, the fisherman ventures out to the Gale Cliffs to the little town of Ingfell, an old whaling town that fell into disarray after the whales suddenly left the area. Before that, however, the fisherman meets another character, the lighthouse keeper, who seems to treat you with a bit more distrust than the other characters. Regardless, the fisherman makes his way to the Gale Cliffs, where he meets an old man who had a falling out with his brother when they were younger, and wants to make things up, but he says he can't do that until we retrieve an old family crest that got lost in the water in the narrow channels of the cliffs. The fisherman gets this crest and returns it to the old man, who then asks him to return it to his brother. When the brother gets the crest, he decides to forgive his brother and allows him to stay with him. With the brothers reunited, the fisherman is rewarded with being able to buy explosives that enable him to remove some debris, allowing him to retrieve the second item for the collector, the music box. After giving the music box to the collector, he rewards us with the Banish ability and sends the fisherman on his way to the Stellar Basin to recover the next item. It's here the fisherman meets a researcher taking refuge in an old castle after her research station is destroyed by a giant creature inside the crater in the basin. After helping the researcher, she builds a device capable of pacifying the creature long enough for the fisherman to recover the next item for the collector, the ring. Next, the collector sends us to the Twisted Strand, where we meet an old war veteran underneath the big tree where he explains he and his squad were flying over the Twisted Strand and because of the fog, ended up crashing there. However, his friends started to be killed off one by these creatures in the Strand called the Mind Suckers that can drive people mad. So the veteran decides to send us after parts of his old plane from an old mortar gun. The fisherman collects the barrel and the stand for the mortar, and after returning to the veteran, he asks you to bring back certain fish found around the strand to make bait to lure the mine suckers into the traps set around the area. After assembling all of the bait necessary, the fisherman manages to lure all of these mine suckers into the traps, allowing the veteran to kill them. Bringing back the flesh of the mind suckers, the veteran finds the next item inside one of them, the necklace. After this, the fisherman is sent after the last item the collector needs, which is located at the Devil's Spine, an ancient set of ruins set on an active volcano. It's here the fisherman meets a crazed man known only as the Fanatic, who tasks the fisherman with lighting 3 statues. After offering different creatures to shrines around the area while avoiding the giant monster in the water, the fisherman collects 3 fathomless flames and uses them to light the statues. The Fanatic then begins a strange ritual, chanting something in the process, but eventually disintegrates before the fisherman's very eyes, leaving behind the final item, the watch. The fisherman delivers the watch to the collector, who says now that he has all 5 items, it's time to make one last voyage, with the collector himself going with the fisherman. They wait until the dead of night when the fog is at its thickest before making their way to the waters behind Greater Marrow. It's here the collector conducts a bizarre ritual by chanting certain things and throwing the items the fisherman collected back into the ocean. Well, thanks, asshole. And after this, well, I'll just let this scene play out for itself. However, we're not done yet, as that was actually the bad ending to the game's story. Before I explain things and show you all the good endings, let me just show you all the trophies I got along the way from the playthrough. Normally I would have like shown you guys the trophies as they pop during the playthrough, but the game story was cool enough to me that I didn't want to interrupt like the flow of it with stuff like, oh yeah, and I popped a trophy here as well. But now that we're caught up with everything, let me explain the story a little bit and possibly blow your mind before I show you all the good ending and pop the last trophy I needed before the platinum. During the game, you have the chance to come across this guy on one of the random islands. This guy is actually the old mayor, the one you can actually ask the collector about, who yells at you about throwing it back. After this, before you make your way to the final location in the game with the collector, you can actually talk to the old lighthouse keeper in Greater Marrow. Once you do this, you get a second dialogue option with the collector where you can ask him about the book. Keep pressing him about it, and eventually... Yep, this whole time you've been going through and getting these items for the collector, it was actually you this entire time. Now, with the Book of the Deep, you go back to the lighthouse keeper, who tells you to go back to the place where it happened and throw the book back into the water. We do that, and then this scene plays out. This was also the final trophy I needed to earn the platinum for the game. So, by now you're probably wondering what's going on as far as the story goes, so I'll try to explain it the best I can. At some point before the game starts, the fisherman you play as was actually married to a woman called Julie. However, one day the fisherman brought Julie and the old mayor out with him to use the dredging equipment to look for treasure, but what they found was anything but that. They had hauled in a large wooden casket, and when they opened it, inside was the Book of the Deep, which awakened something that destroyed the boat, killed Julie, and almost killed the fisherman and the old mayor, but they somehow managed to wash ashore, the fisherman still clutching the book. Not only that, but a deep miasmic fog began to settle on the town of Greater Marrow, clouding their minds and causing most of them to forget about you, except the lighthouse keeper. The old mayor pleaded with the fisherman to throw the book back, but he refused and took to living in solitude on Blackstone Isle, where he would study the book day and night, which eventually caused his personality to split, one side being the fisherman, who wouldn't remember anything about this, and the collector, who remembered everything about this. In fact, in the beginning of the game, during the cutscene, you can actually see both the collector's glasses and the book right there. In the bad ending, you do as the collector says and sail out and complete the ritual, which does bring the fisherman's wife back, but it also awakens this giant Lovecraftian creature from the depths, which basically destroys the world. In the good ending, the fisherman is able to take the book and repress his collector persona long enough to speak to the lighthouse keeper, who remember is the only one who actually remembers the fisherman and remembers what happened on a night when his wife died. She tells him the fisherman needs to throw the book back, for her sake. So the fisherman does this, which causes Leviathan to swallow the boat, the fisherman, and the book all whole, which does end up killing the fisherman, but does allow him to reunite with his wife. This was a pretty good game once it was all said and done. The story was incredible once you pieced it all together, and the gameplay, while being simple, is still pretty fun, and the platinum journey for it wasn't that bad either. I think it has just the right amount of content that it doesn't get tedious or overstay its welcome. That being said, though, it wasn't without a few flaws. Like, some of the controls are a bit wonky if you're trying to get your boat through tight areas like the inside of the Gale Cliffs or the Twisted Strand. The panic meter also ended up not being much of a factor in a lot of my time playing. It only ever being an issue if it spawned in, like, the giant Kraken tentacles that you actually just can't avoid unless you use the banish ability. And while I never personally got tired of the actual fishing minigame you play every time you fish, I did eventually get to the point where I just used atrophy to avoid it at all cost, like to just avoid it altogether, just to get through the Aberration Attractor trophy grind. Overall, though, I'd give this game a solid 8 out of 10, and if you're looking to get into platinum trophies as well, it's also a great game to start with. And with that being said, we get the Dredge platinum done and out of the way, and thank you guys for following me on this journey. I'll see you on the next one.